Alright, today we're going to go through the process of modifying a Team Associated SC28 short course truck to make it a Tiny Coupe Racer. This is the HPI Q32 we've already modified. This one has magnet mount, uses a Whoop battery with a Whoop battery holder, and works pretty well. A little bit harder to modify. We think we can do a little bit cleaner with the SC28, so we're going to give that a shot. Now, the first thing we got to do is remove the stock battery that's internal and replace it with a power whoop connector or a standard whoop connector so that we can use our whoop batteries, change them out quickly, don't have to deal with the time frame of like 45 minutes to do the stock charger. So these things have a pile of screws to remove. So I think we're going to start back here, take these two out. Looks like our bumper comes off. I think we might have to take off this standoff too. There you go. We got glue. Let's see, we run a micro servo here. So the limiting on these would have to be done in that slot. Put a little spacer or something in there. A little piece of sprue in each end. You could stop it, but I don't think that's nearly as necessary. So we'll put this guy off to the side. So we got to remove our stock battery, and then we're going to solder on a couple connections. These are pressed on with a pin. Be real careful of the motor wires back here. Our servo wires are up front. The motor wires, if this comes out, the torsion bars will. Generally, these batteries have a little bit of tape on them underneath, so that pops off. We'll remove our servo connection here. So we got our servo connector, our power wires, or we got our positive nearest the switch. I don't bother to put my camera on a switched lead. I run one set of wires out. There we go. And then just run your camera power off the back of the plug as well. The battery will be switched. You could even charge to the charge port if you so desired. But I don't like leaving them on, so I disconnect the battery every time. Alright, so we got to get the battery out of here. I think it said these are a 170 milliamp hour, 150. So you got a 150, probably a pretty low quality battery. So going to a Tiny Whoop battery is quite an upgrade. I know on the Q32, I've driven the thing for over 10 minutes and don't hit the low voltage protection. The nice thing about doing it this way too is you will get low voltage protection. Since it's running through the stock power, the ESC should shut off. This is hot. Dab flux on this stuff. A lot of times it's high temp solder. First we'll move our ground. Positive. Now, not knowing where my power wires are going to land, I'll tend to run longer set and trim them off as we need. I like to flux everything, gets the heat in there quick. Solders look good. Wires back up, give them a little twisting. Now you can either run your power wire out the sides here, right behind the servo connector, or out the top in the same space. If you're looking at the screw holes, like we punch it out right up here, and come out right there. So I think we're clear either way. I think I'm going to run mine out the top, just in front of the screw holes. I use a hand drill, about 1/8 of an inch drill bit. This plastic's pretty thin, it comes through pretty quick. Makes a little bit of a burr. Real soft plastic. Sure there's nothing sharp in there to chafe the wires. Plug our servo back in. Alright, so we need to get our control board pushed back down on all 4 mount positions. You need to make sure that the rear axle and suspension assembly, the slots for you can see the motor, are up. Keep our wiring clear of our screw holes, tucked down inside nicely. Might need a rotation or two to keep that tight together. Line that up. Now the front suspension, it's kind of hard to line up, but there's a small pin on the servo saver, goes into this slot, and this little pin is the guide for the steering. So if you need to, you can lift the servo up, drop it on the guide, and then it all locks into place like this. It won't stay this way until after we get the top on, so we're just going to take it off. So we'll put our longer wires in first. For our new power wires, pull them up a bit. Now our antenna is going to go in through that small hole. So we got to feed that back through. So now that we've got those through, I'm going to move the top of the chassis off just enough to get the front suspension back on. Make sure the trailing arms are locked in. Careful careful not to force it in case you have any wires bound up anywhere. You don't want to pinch anything. I think if we can get a screw started in the back here. And then we should be able to get the suspension to droop out enough to get the shocks back assembled. One. Oh, knocked the front end out. Probably should have put a screw in there too. Alright, both shocks are lined up. Suspension, you can spread the chassis just enough. We can get our power wires to stay out of there. Get it on the guide. I think it feels good there. And we just have our front bumper assembly. So now while holding that, we'll go ahead and get a screw in our front. We'll have our main chassis assembled again, and beyond to mounting our camera mount and getting the final wiring for the camera. Alright, so next we've got to deal with our camera, our battery mount, battery plug. We're using the Tattu power whip connectors or the PH2.0. And so these mounts, simple double-sided tape, slips through nice and snug. I think we're going to orient it slightly sideways. It's a little too long to get straight in and out easily. So if we mount it just like this, mount securely with a tape, can still get it in and out. Keeps the CG pretty close. Is not a bad idea to scuff the top with plastic. Anywhere you're going to stick anything. TPU usually doesn't need much, but it couldn't hurt just in case there's some loose fibers. Protex silicone double-sided tape. Holds really well. It's been working good on the Q32, and it's a much tighter battery fit on that first one. Take our battery, get it lined up where we want it. Get close. Firm press. Here we go. Guys in there. Our connector from here only needs enough to get the battery on and off. I always keep another pigtail around. Helps when you want to use it to hold the plug and to make sure you have your orientation correct. Now that we're using this TX05 camera, it has OSD support, so you would run the camera out and the end of the VTX from the OSD on the flight controller, but we're not using a flight controller, so we need to jump these two or connect them back together so it actually goes from the camera to the VTX. And then we're also going to add a connector to our power plugs here so that when we take the body off we have a connector in line. So we're going to cut these two shorter. And might give a little bit more for our... And then we'll get these stripped and soldered up. Might leave yourself a little bit of room there in case later on you decide you want to use it in something else. Otherwise you have to take off this hard coating that they put on the solder connections, and it looks like they've coated over some little capacitors, so chance of damaging something there or a trace. Still like to slip a small piece of heat shrink over there just in case it ever gets grounded out. Now we're going to splice on a small connector on each end so that we can remove our body with our camera once it's mounted easily. So we'll make sure the polarity matches. Alright, now our camera wiring and battery wiring should be completed. So we're going to end up cutting a little slot here so we can get this camera recessed back just a little bit, and then we're going to have the wires run out the bottom so we can easily make the connection there and to the battery. So take our controller and on. Battery plug on. Get a light. Check that the switch is on. Rear camera channel. We have power. So we are good. So next, we'll modify the body for the windshield. Or put a hole in the windshield for the camera. Now we're just going to make a couple marks, center up our camera, use a small Sharpie to make some marks on the windscreen so we know where we want to cut a small slot. Alright, so we've cut our notch with the Dremel, got it cleaned up nice. So now we can use a small piece of double-sided tape on the back, one on the bottom, lock our camera in. It should still be able to get to our pin, no problem for a hood pin to get the body off. So we'll add a small piece of double-sided tape to the bottom. Another of the same to the back. After enough testing, we might be able to come up with a nice little printed mount at some point. That should get us going. Center it up on the hood nice. Get a good firm push. Check to make sure we're pretty level. If anything, maybe pointing down a hair. Do a test fit. Body lines up on the back. You can see the pin just underneath. It'll stay out of the camera view. For ease of access to get these out later, we can add a small pull tab on the back of these. Makes it real nice. Just pulls it out. A little harder to push back in. And that's how it'll be. Nice and simple. So after it's all said and done, we've taken a little bit of our nylon cordage, small, added a couple loops to these keepers, added one piece to our front so it's easier to retrieve it. Pull these off. Off to the side. Remove the battery connector. Simple battery removal. It's easy to go ahead and swap another one out. And you're going in no time versus waiting the 45 minutes or so for the factory battery to get all charged up. If your wire routing's done well, it'll roll back, won't get into your tires. Overall, pretty clean setup. And now we'll roll into our DVR footage. So hopefully we can see a few of you guys come out, play around a little bit. Might have to make a small outdoor course. Smooth ground, small jumps, and whoops. Have some more fun.